Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Video Mail for the week of January 16th, 2012. Welcome to the site to all you new members, and welcome back to all the old members. And the Ask Video Mail, as always, is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance or a technical issue answered in a video just like this one, but I need your question if I'm going to answer it. So please send me your questions. The address to send them to is webmaster@kennyroy.com. I go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I think will help the most people, and it's the best way to get the most for your subscription. So if you haven't sent one in, send one right away. It's really easy. Just send an email to that address and ask away. Don't forget, you can also send your Maya file if you're having a technical problem or you just can't figure out what's going wrong with your scene. If it's a character animated scene, just send it to me and I'll open it up and maybe answer it in a Ask Video Mail, or at least I'll take a look at it for you no matter what. So it's just something I want you to be able to take advantage of and know about. So the site is undergoing a few changes. There was a problem with the Facebook commenting on the blog. It was copying all the comments to every single post. So that doesn't look good. So we're going to be fixing that. So there's not going to be any commenting on the blogs for a few days while we figure that out, but you can still put Facebook comments on the articles, the Ask Video Mails, and the lectures, and I appreciate if you do put comments on those, because then it posts it to your Facebook and we can raise the profile of the site a little bit more. And you can also talk to your friends about KennyRoy.com. There's a testimonial program where you can get 5 days free for just writing a testimonial. A lot of people have taken advantage of that, but you can also get 30 days free if you sign up a friend and they use your name as a referrer, and they sign up for 30 days or 60 days, and you get 60 days free if they sign up for a year. So ostensibly you could spend all of your time here in KennyRoy.com for free if you brought enough friends to the party. So please, I really appreciate you spreading the word about the site. It's how I have to have enough Ask Video Mail questions being sent my ways, and enough people watching the lectures in order to keep doing this. So I appreciate all your help in keeping these sites well populated with members. This week's Ask Video Mail is an interesting question. I've been asked this a few times. I like to get to the ones that I get asked a few times, and also it's a good way. It's sometimes good to wait until it's asked a few times, so it's almost like a poll. When is it right to answer this question? So I feel like now is the right time to answer this question. So let's take a look. Here we go. Flying characters. Flying characters are really, really fun. They can be a real challenge, but overall they are definitely a fun animated character to take on in your work. Let's define that. When you talk about a flying character, if it's a superhero, normally they are flying under like the power of magic. Okay, so let's really quickly just like get out of the way the couple of other ways of flying that there could be. If the character has wings, then you probably are talking about doing a little bit of research, looking at some characters that have wings, some animals that have wings, like bats or birds, something like that, and really just using a reference to your benefit. That also means that you're going to be probably very physical with your animation, and you're not going to be doing too much with the character in terms of, say, for instance, doing some really like subtle acting shots in the air, because it's very distracting if the character is bobbing up and down, if they're hovering and beating their wings in order to do that kind of acting shot. Just imagine if you're like really close up on the face and they're feeling something and they're really sad, but their wings are continuously beating in the background, right? So it doesn't lend itself to that kind of performance. One reason why, for instance, in Guardians, the Owls of Ga'Hoole, or Ahul? Legends of the Guardian? I can't remember what it's called now. But that movie, beautifully rendered. I loved so much about it, but they had trouble. You could tell a lot of the scenes were when the owls were flying. They had to just tone the flying way down in order to like really get some like performance. So yeah, so you have to really be careful when you're doing like a creature with wings that's flying. Tinkerbell is easy because she kind of has fairy wings, which are they take their cues more from the insect world. So a fly or a butterfly even, it kind of, that flittering doesn't distract as much, and you can kind of use the motion of the body to sort of enhance or embellish upon your full body performance choices. Okay. Then the other kind is under propulsion, right? So you have your Iron Man kind of propulsion. Now, what that means is that he's kind of a rocket. He doesn't have any wings, and it's not magic that keeps him up. So he's a rocket, and you'll notice that in Iron Man, there's a minimum speed that he has to fly. He doesn't like fly and kind of well, he does come to like a hover, but he doesn't, there's no like in between really. So he's either rocketing to his destination or coming to a stop and raining down like the bullets or whatever, but he doesn't really perform in the air. So you need to be careful with the propulsion as well, because knowing that you don't really have that in between state of flying, nothing between rocket and basically, you know, he puts his hands out or he sticks his feet out and he comes to kind of like a stop in the air. You know that there is another limitation on your performance for that kind of character. So what is the general rule? Well, there is a general rule. Let me first say that when we talk about a lot of the issues in animation, many of them don't have hard and fast rules, but many of them do. And it's those few examples where the hard and fast rules can't be broken that you need to be extra diligent so that you don't just break it arbitrarily. Rules are meant to be broken, of course, and we love that. That's the kind of freedom that we enjoy. We relish it as animators. At the same time, when you ignore the rules that kind of can't be broken, you end up coming across in your work as someone who doesn't kind of like respect the history that we've all gone through. Okay, so there are a lot of hard and fast rules. There's a lot of animation that has no rules. There's a lot of hard and fast rules, and there's some that shouldn't be broken. And so where we've kind of come to this point with flying characters is kind of the following. When you're looking at a character who can fly, basically, you know, by magic or by a superpower, or anything like that, you basically are doing a levitation cycle. It's way too much to have them moving up and down like too much. That looks very, very, very weird. It almost looks as if there are wings that are beating, but they're beating so slowly they shouldn't keep the character up. Okay, so the character moving up and down like this much is way too much. And you'll notice if you actually look at some old school cartoons. Let me try to think of some. I can't remember, but I think like Skeletor in the old He-Man, like had a vehicle or something, or maybe in Thundercats, but in it's definitely like the Hanna-Barbera cartoons in like the 70s, where if you get some of these out and you look at the characters that are in the air, it's almost as if what they were trying to do with those characters was move them up and down so much that it distracted you from the fact that their bodies weren't moving. It was just their mouths, especially something like He-Man. So if you just watch that, or just dig out some clips and check it out, and you'll see that the characters are moving up and down a lot, and it's a very rough cycle. So that's not what you want to do. I think actually Jason Schleifer did an amazing job leading the team on Megamind. And that's the example that I wanted to give of how to do this levitation correctly. Can't show you a clip, of course, but basically the idea is that when your character is levitating, you have a very subtle cycle, a very subtle kind of, it's almost like breathing, that controls their up and down. However, what they did brilliantly in that film is when there was a big gesture, the movement, it was almost as if the levitation cycle was sympathetic to how that gesture went. Okay, so if it was like laughing, ha ha ha, like the character would tilt backwards, ha ha ha, and actually kind of, that levitation cycle would kind of like move back a little bit with each one of those ha's, those exhales. And then kind of like when they came out of it, kind of like come back to that original position where they were talking. And if they gesture, they kind of like, they do that motion and they kind of like cruise forward a little bit. And then wait a second. But and see how like as I'm moving, the body like moves with it. So kind of the hard and fast rule that I'm building up to right here is that your levitation cycle can't be so big or so fast that it looks like there's invisible wings that are beating. You'll lose your audience immediately. You also it can't be too subtle, okay? But you'll notice though, because of the way that editing works, when they go from the wide and their characters moving up and down, they normally brilliantly kind of like calm things down like right on the cut point, so that when you go into the close-up, that bobbing up and down, it's almost as if it's going like this in real space in the wide, and then you like go like this and then cut, and then it goes like this. And then you cut back to the wide and it resumes that. So the readability is really important, but even across the edit, if you're trying to do something really subtle, it works. And look in Megamind, there's many shots where there's a character where it's like the wide and they turn around like, and then it zooms in on their head and everything is way slower. It's obviously, because they would be going in and out of frame if they didn't slow that down. So, also check The Incredibles, because The Incredibles has Syndrome. He flies, but he flies under the propulsion of boots. The thing is, though, he does a lot of gesticulating and a lot of performance and movement in the levitation as propulsion. So, like Iron Man would be a bad example you would look for like performing. But Incredibles, Syndrome especially is really good for sort of a middle ground when you're trying to do the propulsion, but also kind of make it look like a levitation cycle with the opportunity for performance. And I say this, I repeat this over and over and over again when it has to do with performance shots. There, all the little finger twitches and wrist waggles and arm flails that you can do, that really all adds up to zero, really in the long run. It's all about your body language and your posture and your overall pose and how that changes and how you move that body through composition. You're saying a lot more about how like a guy likes a girl if he literally like moves himself closer to her than you ever could with all the little hand gestures and all the, what could you possibly say with this, right? But as he's talking to her, if he takes, one step closer to her, even if it's subtle, more subtle the better, because the audience will pick up on that. So I want to just reiterate, especially with, well, maybe not especially, but just as much with superheroes and flying characters, body language is paramount. It's paramount, and you can get caught so easily in the trap of like using a superhero character, like doing these gestures, like, well, I did this, right? But if he's being like foreboding, he'll like puff up his chest and like but see how his body language, he's like moving towards the the person he's pointing to. Oh, I'm angry at you, or whatever. He starts floating towards him. Or if they're scared, they kind of shrink up, and just like that levitation cycle kind of takes them away just a little bit. Okay. So it's not just like, okay, my arm swings so fast it pulls my body this way. You've got to use that levitation. You've got to use that flying character that's like unbounded by gravity in the same way, with the same emphasis on body language as if you're doing a dialogue shot. All right, I can't stress that enough. In fact, it probably should be, in terms of workflow, oh, here we go. In terms of workflow, your body language should be planned for probably before it is in the dialogue shot. So if your workflow is to draw some thumbnails and then take those poses and just rough them out in Maya, and then maybe time it around, play with the timing and step keys or whatever it is, you probably should take a little bit more time in your workflow to see how your body language is reading, like to camera or whatever, before you even get into things like timing. So like build some compositions and see how powerful you can be with as subtle body language shifts and like telling the arc of the story with the body alone, with that with that flying animated character. Okay, the worst thing you can possibly do, let me just say this. If you're working on a show or a film or a commercial or anything with a flying character, the worst thing you can do is just grab all the arms and legs, turn to FK, raise the character up in the air, and then start working on this, kind of like figure eight floating movement. That's the worst thing you can do. All right. That actual motion is really easy, and I know everyone here can get that. It should be a lot more about the fact that you have been given an extra tool. Basically the fact that he doesn't have to be standing on the ground and pulled down to the ground by gravity to free you to do even more with body language and composition than you were before. Okay. So check out those films, especially Megamind. The whole team did fantastic on that, using the things that I'm talking about. Incredibles is good for that hybrid kind of like levitation cycle, but with propulsion. Syndrome has a couple speeches where he uses that, and just have fun with it. It's going to take a lot of experimentation. I remember my first. The first short film class that I mentored, that animation mentor, there was a student who wanted to do a character on a trampoline, and he was like bouncing up in the air and then like dancing in air, and I didn't know what it was going to look like, and I said, listen, I'm sorry, I could tell you that I'm going to know exactly what this is going to look like, but I've never seen this, and anyone who it tells you like, oh yeah, that should look like this, or it's going to look like that, I mean, they're lying. They don't know. So you're just going to have to do it, and you're going to have to experiment and find it. So if you're interested in flying characters, don't think anymore. Don't delay any longer. Just take the advice I just gave you and run with it, and find your own discoveries. Okay. That was a great question. Please send more. Of course, I can always use more Ask Videomail questions. They are the fuel that runs the